everybody. My name is Kealy Spring. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I am also a leadership coach, and today I am in my therapist seat and hat, and I have with me TJ, who I was recently introduced to, and I'm excited to learn more about. So to that end, I'm going to turn it over to you, TJ, to introduce yourself and the niche you work with, kind of what populations you work with, where you're located, kind of the general overview of your practice. So without
Sounds
further ado,
good. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, my name is TJ Dubovich and I am an MFT-C. I live in Arvada, which is, just a northern suburb of Denver, and I've been practicing for about 3 years now. And um, let's see. I like to see individuals and couples. So that's, I like to have a mixture of both. And the populations I tend to serve are folks in the LGBT community, folks that are in like the polyamorous or ethical non-monogamy communities as well. Yeah, I'm just excited to be here today. So
And TJ, do you work primarily virtually or in person or hybrid?
yeah, so I do a hybrid, 2 days virtual, 2 days in person. So I work out of People House, which is this fantastic little organization in Denver that has an affordable counseling program that I actually interned at, but now I rent space out of the home. And it's really neat. It's this building from the 1800s, and it's been serving the community as a place for therapy since the 1960s, I believe, 70s. So pretty neat place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to that end, would you mind sharing how you became a therapist? How did you start your clinical journey? What kind of led you to this path?
Sure. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. So when I was in high school, I was taking college classes, and that was when I was first introduced to my first psychology course, and I was smitten right away. I was just really interested in, how we conceptualize behaviors, how the brain works, and also relationship. I think that's kind of my biggest draw to therapy is how do we function in relationship to each other, and how does that affect the ways in which we, the micro levels of like our inner selves, but also then the macro levels of how do we interact within our communities and families. And so that was kind of my first like exposure, and then I ended up in my undergrad majoring in psychology and sociology. So that was like, I definitely was interested, wanted to, explore further. But then I started getting into the mental health portion of an insurance company, Cigna. And so I spent quite a few years kind of exploring that angle before getting my first master's degree in healthcare administration, because at that time I was really interested in having create my own LGBT focused elderly community slash like assisted living facility. That was kind of my main goal. And once I explored that first master's degree, I realized that although I was super interested in that concept, I was more interested in working with people on more of an individual level than as an administrative level. So it took that entire master's degree to kind of find that out about myself, but I'm really grateful that I did because I learned a lot of leadership skills through that master's program. But then once I had kind of completed that degree, it was pretty shortly thereafter that I felt very drawn to do the master's in marriage and family therapy, and so that's kind of where I got drawn into that piece. Yeah, so that's a
Yeah, and
short version. Yeah.
fair enough. And was most of your training in the Denver area? Is that kind of where you went to school and
Yeah, I actually went to Capella University, so an online program, because I knew that I was going to be moving, and so I wanted to make sure that I had, the flexibility. So yeah, it's an online program. So that's when I started the internship at People House, which I mentioned is the place that I now work at.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
Um, so next question is, what do you like about therapy? Clearly this was a calling for you, it sounds like,
Hmm.
from kind of what you're describing, but
Yeah.
what do you like
Hmm.
about it, the role?
Yeah, my like initial first answer is everything. But I guess to narrow it down a little bit, I, I think first and foremost, therapy has served me really, really well. So I first started seeing a therapist when I was 18 years old to process my sexuality and my gender. And it, not to be too cliche, but it was life changing for me. I had some therapists who helped me not only be able to find my voice for myself, but also to be able to heal from some of the experiences in childhood, just being able to have that someone hear you and see you. And I think that, I was hooked from then on. And so, yeah, I think that I guess that's one piece of it, is that it served me. But then now that I have been able to serve my community in this space, it is the most rewarding thing I have ever done with my life. And it invigorates me every day to like know that I get to, you know, see people through these journeys and help them and guide them, and then also just to be able to see the ways that they create their own healing it's an incredible process. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. It definitely resonates in terms of that healing journey can be so powerful, just kind of experience, witness, and be a part
Yeah.
of it for somebody. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what are some modalities that you work with those the populations that you work with? Are there certain, techniques, tools, modalities?
Yeah, so when I first got out of graduate school, I was really focused on solution focused therapy. So that was definitely my gig. I loved that, you could utilize the strength-based approach with your clients and really help them just cultivate what they already, I think, in our inner selves know, right? Um, so that was like what I first initially did. I would say also kind of like alongside that would be a collaborative approach of just like, okay, so what are you wanting out of this? How can I help serve you to meet those goals? Now that I've been practicing for a while, that's shifted a little bit. I've been utilizing IFS um, techniques, which I love. Also, I utilize the Enneagram. So that's something that I've incorporated into my work. And then in terms of my couples work, so I originally was very drawn to the Gottman method, and I went through all three levels of training for that. I am not a certified Gottman therapist. I just want to make sure I name that, but yeah, was able to become trained in that, and I was really drawn to, I think, kind of I don't know, the common sense and practicality of the Gottman method. But in for the past 8 months, I've been in the developmental model training, and I am hooked. So that has been now what my main focus is for working with couples, and actually some of the elements I even utilize with my individual clients in terms of like helping them with differentiation. I don't know how familiar you are with the developmental model, but
So I was actually going to ask you for the audience, and could you,
mhm.
for myself, I know a little bit, but could you maybe share a little bit more about what that is and, why it's
Absolutely.
important or impactful?
Yeah, so the developmental model was developed by Ellen Bader and her husband, I believe his name is Peter Pearson. Sorry if I get that wrong, Pete. And I, so they're a couple that have developed this model that is kind of based in three different aspects. So they take the concept of differentiation, which is when we are able to have our own individual experience outside of those around us, right? Which for folks who maybe that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like if you understand the concept of codependency, differentiation is the exact opposite of that, right? So it takes differentiation, neurobiology, and attachment theory, and it creates this model that helps folks to have individual goals for themselves, but then how to then communicate and work with the needs and desires of the partnership. um yeah,
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
but I could go on and on. Yeah, it's a fantastic model. And so I've been getting trained by Tom Brewitt. Not
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
know
you're
Tom.
familiar.
I
Oh,
actually I
that's
know Tom.
great.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
actually know him. It's I should actually reach out to Tom about a video for this.
You absolutely should. So yeah, he is incredible. And so yeah, he's been the one that's I've been doing the training. And what's particularly cool about his training is that he's geared it towards the LGBT community because queer relationships do in some ways look different, right? In the ways that we were, uh, as Tom would say, like we have a different kind of queer adolescence that happens usually later in adulthood. And also just the ways in which like queer relationships are perceived within society. And so I think like I'm so glad that he has created um this program for the LGBT community because it's been, yeah, like I said, as I could go on and on, the developmental model has been life changing, and just the way that I conceptualize how to assist couples and polycules.
Mhm. So to that end, could you speak a little bit more about how those relationships might look a little different? You started to kind of
Hmm.
tap into that a little bit, but
Hmm.
since it is kind of your niche, and somebody listening
Yeah.
might be like, "Oh, actually, that resonates for me." Could you just share a little
Hmm.
bit more about kind of what
Yeah.
the dynamics might be that somebody comes in seeking support for?
Sure. Well, just to answer the first question, I think one of the main differences that I've noticed within the LGBT and queer community is that, a lot of times we don't have, as we're um, experiencing our childhoods, our, pre-adolescence, our teenagehoods, we don't this is now shifting in our society, but a lot of us did not have a whole lot of queer like elders and individuals to look up to see, okay, how do we navigate relationships that are the ways that we see it, not straight and cisgendered relationships, right? And so I think that's first and foremost like um one of the key points of that. And then also I think um there's, as I was kind of mentioning, this like kind of second coming of age, right? Where we are finding our own identities within how, like, that have been claimed for ourselves and not dictated by others, because we exist in a, primarily straight and cisgendered world. And then I think third, it's navigating, you know, potential religious trauma, family trauma, individual mental health issues, right? So I think those all also play a piece in how that you can conceptualize working with a queer individual that might look different than their straight or cisgender counterparts.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. I recently heard that I thought this was a thing of the past, but that conversion therapy was coming back into the political realm. And there was this push, and I thought, oh, gee,
Yeah.
I thought we were way past that. But I think there,
Yeah.
to your point about like religion, because my understanding of that one too is like that's more religiously kind of based,
Hmm.
you know, idea of
Hmm.
whatever. It's awful, but that those traumas like they get kind of
Hmm.
it's traumatic for people. I've heard stories of people that have gone through some of these things, so I can imagine what you're kind of talking about is this
Hmm.
ripple effect, that how it affects individuals and couples in these relationships in life in general,
Hmm.
right? Just these kind of normalized ways people think about things can really kind of damage the psyche.
Absolutely. And just to continue that point, like I think, obviously I'm speaking in generalities, but some queer folks have kind of been functioning in a level of survival mode, right? And so when you think about that type of mentality, then entering into relationship, I think there's just, a lot of opportunity there for healing within that relationship, but also that like kind of individual, like what the developmental model focuses on, having that individual strength to be like, okay, what are the ways in which I am showing up here? And having that then potentially be healing in being able to name, what are my actual feelings here, not, which brings it back to, you know, having those types of role models and experiences of like, I'm able to speak my truth, right?
Sure. I think it's super powerful and needed.
Mhm.
So to that end, what would a session look like? If you're practicing this developmental model, is it a organic
Yeah.
process? Is it kind of
Mhm.
rigid in terms of, the steps or the process?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this today because I'm in the process of shifting a little bit in how I approach. So obviously individual sessions look different than couples. Individual sessions, I'm a little bit more like flexible and I kind of like I like to let my client kind of lead a little bit unless they've asked me to have more structure within the session. But within my couples work, I used to be quite a bit more laid back. And kind of like let's go with the flow. Hey, how you doing? How's it been going? Right, kind of like letting them take the the lead. And now I've really the developmental model has helped give me the tools to have a little bit more structure. And I'm still learning how to lean into that, but because I tend to like to be more of a collaborative therapist, but the developmental model really requires you to take charge and leadership in the room and to kind of provide that um the structure to make sure that things don't go off the rails and that we're focusing and continuing to really investigate and dig deeper into some of the issues that either are getting pushed under the rug, right, or are yeah, they need to be addressed in the room. So I would say a session with me now is definitely a lot more structured in terms of my couples work. Yeah.
Yeah, fair, fair. I'm gonna have to
Mhm.
look into the developmental model. It sounds pretty interesting.
I
I'm
know.
familiar.
I'm like every time I tell people it, I'm like, should I become a spokesperson? Like, but
Maybe
it's
you're doing a great job.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, I know it's cliche, but it's been life changing, and especially in terms of just I think the main thing with the developmental model is how you conceptualize your clients' relationships. I think it's brilliant.
mm,
I'll leave it at that. So.
fair. Okay, well, so let's jump to the next question here.
Yeah.
Is there anything that still surprises you about therapy?
Oh my gosh. I just had a session yesterday that I was like, I think the thing that surprises me the most still about therapy is how honored I feel to be able to sit with someone and their journey. I just, the one that these individuals, they're trusting me with their stories, and I take that so deeply and so seriously, and it's so beautiful to get to witness another person's journey and have and be witness to that, but then also be able to be a part of guiding them and assisting them in finding the healing that they're looking for, or the coaching goals that they're trying to accomplish. It still shocks me just how beautiful it can really be to experience that with another person, or with a couple.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that sentiment. I always there's a sense of feeling honored that people come in and they share these like deeply personal, sometimes tragic things with us, and there's just this kind of connection you build, and but it surprises me sometimes that people are so willing to open and be in that
Mhm.
space, and you want to honor that with.
Absolutely. And just to like to that end, I didn't mention earlier, but I also am a sex therapist in training. And so I think for me, the vulnerability of folks being able to share that type of aspect of themselves is also just it's very humbling, and it's just been incredible to gain have that trust build up with another individual, and then be able to have healing happen through relationships and sex therapy.
Yeah, very powerful.
Mhm.
Um, so is there anything that you wish people knew or understood about therapy that you kind of run into either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because I'm actually in the process of starting to write my own children's book that I want to kind of introduce the idea of therapy and the different reasons why folks might go to therapy, but in to present it to children in a way so it makes it more normalized. Like, this doesn't have to be scary. It can be, there's many different reasons why we might access it. Because I think I mean, I'm so glad that there is a shift in mental health care, but I do think we still have a stigma that, like, especially, well, no, actually, in both individual and couples work, that, like, there's something seriously wrong with you, or there has to be mental illness, there has to be um quite a bit of dysfunction. And while that might be true, I think therapy can be accessed for a multitude of reasons, right? So I think destigmatizing that is really important. So my idea for this book is something that I'm very excited about. And so that's, I think through that, and I guess through this interview, like I think one of the things that I hope folks can take away from this today is that therapy can be something that you experience for multitude of different reasons, right? So there's many different goals and intentions that can drive you to come to therapy. And also therapy doesn't have to look any one certain way, right? So like if you think about the ways in which a lot of times TV shows, media, right, portray like you're laying on the couch, you're getting hypnotized. Yeah, that might be something that someone's interested in doing, but a lot of times it's not, it doesn't look like that, right? And so, and there's just so many different ways that you can, as a client, advocate for what you want your therapy to look like. And I think that's also something that I really want folks to understand is that, like, you don't, you get to be an advocate for your care and how you want it to look. For example, I have recently decided to offer up walk-in talks because I know some of my folks, like, they tend to process better when they're moving their bodies, right? And they can feel more empowered when they're able to utilize the bilateral stimulation that walking provides. And so, just that, for example, like I think a lot of folks would be like, "What? I can like go outside and do therapy. I don't have to be on a couch." And I'm like, "Yes, you can." Right? So I think just being able to think about all the different ways that we can access this type of healing and, yeah, I think there's just a lot to explore there. And I hope that this provides some folks with just a few ideas of the ways that you can access healing and help through many different avenues.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you bring this up. I just had somebody that I've been working with for 5 years end with me yesterday, and I
Okay.
couldn't be prouder of them because
Good.
they were like, I think I actually need more deep psychoanalytic
Mhm.
analysis. And that's what, and I was like, great, that's great. Like to me, that was so powerful because they were figuring out what they need. We had done what we could do in those years.
Yeah.
We had, you know,
Mhm.
ups and downs and stops and starts and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But like for
Mhm.
me, that was so powerful. I love that you bring this up that they were able to say, hey, this is what I think I need. And I feel really
Mhm.
bad about ending. And I was like, no, please
Yeah.
go do if that's what you need, go do
Yeah.
it. Like that
Yeah.
it's the healing journey, no matter what that looks like for anybody, right?
Mhm.
And it may or may not be what you have to offer. And that's
Mhm.
part of the reason actually for these interviews as well, is
Yeah.
there's tons of clinicians out there. There's choose your own
Yeah.
adventure and clinicians, right?
Exactly. Exactly. You can dabble. That's okay. I think that's the other thing that folks, I think, feel like, they feel really I think a lot of folks feel pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of like they have to stick with one particular person, right? Like they have to invest in one particular person. And I just want folks to understand that, like, please advocate for what you're needing, and if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And you know for all of my like budding therapists out there, like, I know it can feel painful if someone leaves us and it's like, actually I need something different. But I think when you start to lean into that, I think you're gonna actually be able to have a stronger practice, because you're gonna know you're gonna lean into what you do, and you're gonna also feel okay with the things that you don't, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's more of
Yeah.
an abundance. I think of it as abundance versus scarcity, right?
Yes.
Living in that kind of abundance place of, there will always be somebody else that needs what I have to offer. There's going to be
Hmm.
somebody that needs what somebody else has to offer, and that's
Absolutely.
wonderful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And if we can help people get there, or not stick with somebody, or I
Hmm.
think it's powerful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that part up.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so final question in this kind of clinical area.
Hmm.
There a favorite tool that you have or something that we could share with the audience that might be good for them to kind of take away that could be, helpful for more general audience?
Absolutely. Can I do two?
Please. Oh, I
All
love
right.
all about tools, so please. You got
Yeah. Um, so my first go-to for a lot of folks, and some folks will know this, coming into therapy, but I like to always bring it up is box breath. And the reason why I like box breath is for a few different reasons. One is it can be done anywhere, right? So it doesn't have to be like this kind of like you have to be in a corner, you're going, like it can really be implemented, at work, on the bus, like when you're in traffic. Like it's so, for folks who don't know, box breathing, they call it box breath because you do it to the count of four. And for a lot of folks, it's helpful to imagine a box that is expanding to the count of four and then detracting to the count of four. And then as you inhale to the count of four, you then pause at the top and you hold your breath. But what I've learned through the Huberman podcast is actually if you, at the end of the holding your breath for four, if you do two inhales, it actually is even more effective in terms of lowering your blood pressure and your heart rate even faster. And so you do this process, you can do it for as many minutes as you'd like, right? And it's such a quick and easy accessible way to get us to calm down within our bodies, become a little bit more grounded, and potentially get us out of, whether it be like your mind racing, anxiety, right, stress, maybe you're really agitated. So that's my first go-to for most folks, just because I just love the accessibility of it.
it.
My second, is that I love the miracle question. And I usually wait and I use it for like really big things, right? Like once I've really gotten to know a client and and it's something that's, pretty tender, I'll get to that place and then say, if you were to wake up tomorrow and this thing that you've been holding is better or gone, right? It depends on the context of what they're experiencing. What would be different? What would How would you be different? How would your friends and family know you're different? And I think that I love that question because it forces us out of I think sometimes like the muddled places that we can be in when we're hurting and when we're struggling, to a place of relief and hope. And you know, in this day and age, we need that.
Yes,
So
for sure. I love that. You gave one mindfulness one and one more kind of thinking, cognitive. That's great. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So TJ, are you ready for some more kind of personal get to know you questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so first question, what is making you happy right now?
Ooh, definitely the warmer weather. Summer is my jam. That is, yeah, it's like instant mood lift when the sun is out more. And obviously in Denver, the sun is out a lot right now, and like everything is green, and I have these lilac bushes that are blooming in my yard. So yes, that is definitely what is giving me some
Yeah,
hope right now.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your favorite app?
Ooh. It's definitely Instagram. I guess I just gotta out myself. That's my, and I just to give a little shout out, Heal and Grow Colorado is my Instagram handle. If you want to take a look at my stuff, and yeah.
Yeah.
So mhm.
Um, okay, what about beach or mountains?
Oh, mountains.
Mountains.
Well, okay, depends. Actually, because I do have a pretty big love for both. But, since I'm in Colorado and I've been able to experience the gorgeous hikes and outdoor adventures of the Rockies, it's definitely mountains though.
Yeah, they've got the other thing about Denver that I didn't realize because you always think of the mountains, but like when I lived in Boulder was um the wide it's like big sky like for till you get to the mountains you get this like big sky so
Mhm.
you just kind of it feels expansive. I feel like
Yes.
more than you think it would in the mountains, right? Because you're it's
Yeah.
everywhere. A lot of,
Yeah, it's
lot of
sprawling for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of great hikes and things in the area.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Uh, okay, what is one thing that movies never get right? You mentioned something a little bit earlier, so that could
Ooh,
be your
yeah.
answer, but you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, one of my pet peeves is in movies is the ways that therapists are pretty unethical typically in film. And sometimes it's funny, right? Like Shrinking is like playing a therapist that they're doing some pretty some wild stuff with their clients that, for us actual therapists, it would be wildly unethical. But I get that it's for comedy effect. But I think that's definitely one is just like it kind of provides this like potential stigma, but also potential um misunderstanding of like what therapy can actually look like. That's why I'm super stoked that there's things like couples therapy. That show I think more adequately shows kind of and more accurately shows how couples and therapy can.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it hard to watch some of the shows or things that have therapy in them just for that very reason, right? It's hard. But
Yeah.
shrinking is funny, but I think the thing about shrinking that I like too is it shows why that was bad. Like how it goes so wrong, and
Hmm.
the kind of journey you see that like that's why you don't touch
Yeah.
you.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Good point.
Um, okay, what's the best way to relax?
Mm. I think it's in for me, it's getting my brain engaged in something creative, and that can look a variety of different ways, right? It can be writing a short story, that can be painting, it can be playing a musical instrument. I think just something that allows you to kind of get lost within yourself a little bit, but also potentially allowing your brain to create something that is just, I think that in itself allows us to become a little bit more embodied and have an experience that is relaxing. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Also, cats.
Also cats. Fair. I know you've got a cat
Animal snugs. Those are, yeah, a go-to for sure.
for sure. Okay, dream trip location.
Mm. I really want to go to Thailand. That is my next goal. Absolutely. Thai food is my favorite cuisine. So that just in itself, I mean, I pretty much am planning when I go to just eat as much as possible. But I also I love Buddhist Thai culture. I think it's so beautiful, and I want to actually be able to visit a real elephant sanctuary in which I'm able to contribute, money to folks who are working towards elephant conservation. So
Yeah.
also, I mean, I don't know if you saw the most recent season of White Lotus, but I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I
Seems
went
like
to
the place to
Thailand
go.
a few years back. It's great. And we actually did a Thai cooking class. So I would encourage you, and I can tell you if you go to Chiang Mai, I can tell you the one we went to because he was lovely. It was like an organic and he had his own place. It was amazing to kind of learn, but we still
Sign
missed
me up.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
it's good
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh. Stop taking yourself so dang seriously. Number one. Yeah.
Good one.
Um, absolutely. Just, and I think also trust the process,
Mhm.
which I know is a very cliche thing to say as a therapist, but it's
True.
true. Like, really lean in and trust the process because you'll be amazed at what it's going to end up showing you.
Mhm. Yeah, very true. Cliche, but true. I agree.
Mhm.
Okay, you already kind of answered this one, but Four Seasons, what's the best one?
Summer. You got it. I mean, it's sunny, it's pool season, I play pickleball. It means I get to be outside playing pickleball instead of in a gym. I mean, it's got it all.
Sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, what would be the worst superhero power to have?
The worst one. Ooh. I've always thought that the Hulk kind of was like unfortunate because it was like you never really know when you're gonna just like pop out of your skin and like I don't know, like what if you're in like a tight little like I don't know car or something and like it's like explosion. Oh, that one has always been a little like
Yeah,
like I get that like it'd be cool to have the power once you have it, but like the controllability, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think maybe that.
Turning into a big green person at any given
Yeah.
moment, depending on where you are.
I mean, thinking about it as a therapist, could you imagine?
Middle of a session, all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah. Talk about some trauma. Yeah, yeah. So
that would be horrible. Okay, so what, we got two more questions here. What would
Mhm.
be an animal that resonates for you?
Oh, so I'm a huge animal lover. So this is a tough question. The sloth is my favorite animal. I don't know if it's necessarily because I relate to it though, because I'm pretty like ambitious go-getter, so I'm not actually sloth-like. Um, so I guess in terms of like an animal that like more encapsulates my personality, I would say like a dog. 100%. Like
Uh-huh.
I just, that like golden retriever energy.
You all day.
Yep. Exactly. Or sometimes more like an English bulldog where it's like I'm just gonna nap and hopefully somebody gives me snacks. Yeah.
Fair, fair. Some little treats.
Yep.
Fun, sleep, food.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, final question. When you look back at your life, what do you hope to be able to say?
I wasn't expecting this question. Woo. Okay. Um, hmm. I mean, the first thing that's rising up for me is that I've served others. That's really like I want to look back and be like, okay, like you were a piece in some folks like healing, feeling good about themselves, having them laugh. Like when I think about my like the book I want to write, like if I can have one kiddo feel more comfortable to go to therapy, like how cool is that, right? Like so I think for me, I hope that I can look back one day, potentially if I'm ever able to retire, and be able to like say like, like your work was worth it and it had meaning and um, yeah, that's my goal. That's what I hope for.
Super powerful, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, TJ. You are officially seen.
Yeah,
So appreciate you taking the time to speak
yeah,
with me today and, kind of
mhm,
share all that you shared. And
yeah.
before we hop off here, is there anything else you'd like to
Mhm.
say before we say goodbye?
Um, yeah, just to pitch, yeah, my business again. So yeah, it's Heal and Grow Colorado. I have a website, Psychology Today, and my Instagram handle are all the same. Just to reiterate, kind of to the beginning of this, I see folks in person and virtually. And I see individuals, couples, and polycules, and so yeah, check me out if you're interested. And I really appreciate you taking the time to interview me today. And it means a lot to be able to just get my voice heard out there. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, well, truly, thank you, TJ. And I will include all that information and yeah, ways for people to get a hold of you as well, just so that they don't have to search too hard to figure out how to reach out and speak with you.
Absolutely.
All right,
Great. Thank you.
see you again.
Mhm.